That's the motto. Drop a few bills and pop a few champagne bottles. Throwing that money like you just won the lotto. Whipping up all damn summer, making that bread and butter. Tell me did I just stutter? That's the motto. Drop a few bills and pop a few champagne bottles. Throwing that money like you just won the lotto. Whipping up all damn summer, making that bread and butter. Tell me did I just stutter? That's the motto.
Welcome back to one of these little shorts where we are going to look at a left back, a potential successor to Dan Burn. But first of all, we've got the boys in to facilitate this conversation. So welcome in Chris and Richie. How are you boys doing?
Cool, mate. All right.
Yeah.
Good.
Good stuff.
We're going to say this at the start of every short, aren't we? I'm all right, yeah. Sounds.
Yeah, all right. As we always do.
As we always do. Yeah.
But left back is the hot topic of conversation. Who is going to replace Dan Burn as the first choice left back going into our Champions League season? And there's one player, there's many others, but there's one player that were brought to you for discussion for this one, and it is Stuttgart's own Borna Sosa. So Borna Sosa, Croatian international left back. Again, let's have a look at some of his stats here. 25 years old. Like I say, he is a left back, very much an attacking left back. But he's a great age, 25 years old.
I was waiting for it.
It's a great age. It's a perfect age. And look, first of all, I want to get your thoughts on the need for a left back, and secondly, what do you make of potentially Newcastle signing someone like Borna Sosa for Newcastle in this Champions League season? Chris, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think. Do you know what? It sounds weird saying this, but I think we all feel guilty, don't we, for saying that we do need to upgrade on Dan Burn, because Dan Burn's been absolutely brilliant, this season, and what a fantastic signing from Eddie Howe, and great to have a local lads, back at the club. But I think we all acknowledge that down that right hand side, Kieran Trippier. He gives you so much going forwards, but you've also got that defensive capability. And I think the only thing that lets Dan Burn down is the fact that we would like to see more, bursts into the box and getting those crosses whipped in and stuff like that. And as great as Dan Burn's been, I think it is a position that we do need to build on. Whether Dan Burn stays as the backup left back or the backup left centre back behind Botman, brilliant. But we acknowledge that we do need a new left back now. Borna Sosa, as you said, Pete, you mentioned him first. I think it was you that mentioned him first out of everyone, saying that you were really impressed with him. Again, another player that comes with a really good reputation. 6'2", so he's a big lad. It's not quite as big as Dan Burn, but big lad. When I was looking, on Wikipedia, I was looking at his stats and what he's done. He's one of the few people who's literally gone in nearly every single age bracket for Croatia. He's played at 14, 15, 16. 17, 18, 19, 21, and then obviously he's made 14 appearances for Croatia. So an experienced lad, he knows, he's very experienced considering he's such a young age at 25. Obviously he's been playing his trade at Stuttgart. He's been at Dynamo Zagreb. For me, I think, again, talking about potential and the fact that a lot of people are talking about him. Sounds like he'd be a really good signing. We keep saying that we need to, reach out into this continental market, because the equivalent of Borna Sosa in the Premier League, I imagine, will probably be 30, 40, 50 million. Whereas if you go over to Germany and you try and tempt them from there, how much would Borna Sosa be? Maybe 20, 25? It could be half the price that you'd be looking at for, a Premier League player. So for me, I'm excited by it.
Yeah, it's interesting, Richie, because Chris has made an interesting point. There was talk actually that his contract was running down at Stuttgart, so there could have been certainly in January a knockdown fee. Nobody's really confirmed that, but from your position, Richie, Borna Sosa, Chris is absolutely right. We've talked about him since probably around just before the World Cup. last year as a potential, and he's been linked with Newcastle. But what do you make of Borna Sosa? What kind of stands out for you in particular about him as a left back?
Well, first of all, we know how good the internet is, so I can confirm he's got 2 years left on his contract for you, Pete. There you go, up with date knowledge straight away in a short. But regards to Borna Sosa, there's so many different things. Obviously, we're doing a trilogy of left backs, and this is the first one. And I think there's different positives for each and every one. Like the one thing for me that the main experience that Borna Sosa, he's got international experience, he's got European experience as well, but he's also the fact he's coming from the German league. Now, the German league, I think this is, I know me and Pete have talked this in depth before about when you look to go raid into some of the big 5 leagues. The Bundesliga tends to be the one that's the most similar to the Premier League for style of play, but it's not sometimes got the quality in depth, because obviously you've got your 2, 3, 4 teams really who are, the ones that buy for everything every single season. Whereas Newcastle, the Premier League this year, you start picking us into the mix, Brighton into the mix, Villa into the mix now, and you're going to start having, realistically, probably behind the end, you could have a good 10 teams in this Premier League who on the day are capable of beating each other. So he's that sort of, for me, and I'm obviously, you want to talk about his stats coming up, Pete. You look at his attacking capabilities, he's very, very like for like Trippier. Obviously, the one main thing about it is he's got a lot more height than Trippier. That's probably one of the big pluses. As we said in a previous short, he wants a lot of, Eddie Howe likes a lot of height in the team. For various different reasons and stuff like that, but I think it'd be a perfect fit. But obviously, we can discuss that going on now.
Well, we can bring his heat map up, and he's got some of his stats there. 2 goals this season, if I'm right in thinking, 7 assists, which is always good from a left back, a full back, creating those sort of chances and manifesting them into goals. But Chris, you look at that heat map there. Very different to Dan Burn, wouldn't you say, in terms of his positions and where he is? Certainly in the attacking end, is that the biggest thing that you're looking for with any potential new left back that's coming in?
I think so, Pete. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the only disappointing thing this season from Dan Burn, and I feel harsh saying disappointing because he has been brilliant, but the balance isn't quite there on either side of the pitch, because we see all the time how many times you see Kevin Trippier overlapping, and he did it so often and so well with Miggy when Miggy was banging all those goals in. It would be nice to see your left back bombing up, but that he's capable and more than able of getting back. And that heat map shows that. If anything, you could argue, looking at it, he's actually got more heat in the map in the attacking side of the pitch rather than the defending. Obviously you want your left back to defend, don't get me wrong, but when you've got that attacking threat going forward, it's only going to help. And whether that be Anthony Gordon, whether it be Alan St. Maximin, whoever's on that left hand side, if they've got a player knowing this lad's going to overlap me, I can look for the pass out wide. Whereas I think this season it's been a bit like, where's Dan? Is he going to come? I'll probably just cut in. Whereas if you've got Borna Sosa or someone of that ilk who's bombing up and down the left, whether it's going past you or supporting you in behind, that's really what we need, and that heat map shows it for me.
I think a quick one just while we're on the heat map, Pete, is it's not sorry. It's just the one thing that we lack with Target being that team, because it wasn't a Dan Burn preference, is Borna Sosa can take corners as well. So it's another alternative for set pieces. We had that when we had Target and Trippier. We could vary it, so teams didn't necessarily know how we were going to take the set piece. With Sosa, you can. Obviously, you needed Burn in the box because he's the tallest player in the team. So it's another string to the bows. Be like the same when we're adding to the attacking creativity or attacking threat of Newcastle going forward.
Yeah, takes the burden off Kieran Trippier, in swingers, out swingers, free kicks, corners. You're absolutely right. It adds to that, and that's another string that we need to add to our bow. That's for sure. It says on there he started 22 games. He had he had an injury-plagued end of the season, so it's the stats are quite like scared a little bit with regards to his overall ability, because we haven't quite seen everything over a course of a full season that you would come to expect. He didn't play a lot over that period of time, but just want to kind of look at some stats, and here are his stats. And look, they're there for anyone that can't make out these stats. They're there for all to see, particularly from the sort of creative and attacking side of things. But what's really interesting, I want to get your thoughts on this, is that these stats in relation to our current left backs that we've got at the club. So you've got the stats here in relation to Dan Burn, which makes for interesting reading, very interesting reading in particular areas, and also for Matt Targett, which isn't as is kind of damning in areas as others. But Chris, I want to get your thoughts on this, and I'll bring it back to Dan Burn. Like, what do you make of Borna Sosa's stats, in comparison to both Burn and Targett?
Do you know what? In terms of Burn, like, I'm not that surprised, but I'm surprised in that how big a gulf there is. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at the creativity, I'm looking at the attacking. I knew it would be more. I just didn't think it would be that more. And then you can see there, Burn's defending is much more. Now, that's obviously due to the fact that, Burn will tend to stay in his position and make sure that he's always back for when, teams counter us, or, we're under a lot of pressure. So, I've got to admit that has blown my mind, that one. Like, I didn't realize it would be so different. Just stick the Targett one up for us as well. Yeah, so obviously Targett's a more rounded player, isn't he? You can see that, and he's still got more defensive. He's still more defensive minded than Borna Sosa, but again, the creativity, it's still pretty big. So for me, I'm excited just looking off that at the creativity and the attacking, because that's what we've been really craving and really missing this season. So for me, yeah, love it, mate. Like that, those stats look good.
Definitely, Richard. I'll come to you with our last point. Is that looking at these two stats, and I flip back to Dan Burns there, and then we'll look back at targets. Does that show you the direction that Newcastle are looking at if we were to sign someone that's so attacking in that fullback position? What does it kind of tell you in terms of where Newcastle are looking to go?
I think with having Dan Burn in the team, it goes to show why we were so more defensively solid this season, because you've got a more defensive left back. And we know that when Trippier used to push up on the right, he used to come in and drop in as a back three. Yeah. So we were more defensively sound. Now, the other thing is, if we wanted to be more attacking on that left-hand side, so we're less predictable to the opposition as such. A lot of people, especially the first half of the season, we knew everyone was coming down from Trippier and Miggy the first half of the season. So that was, it was predictable eventually, and it did start to settle down. If you look at this, Sosa's the type of fullback you want if you want a Trippier on the left-hand side, ideally. But then what you're going to have to do is you're hopefully going to have Trippier, and you should do, because his knowledge of the game, his experience, that if Sosa's going to go forward like he's done on the right, he's going to have to be able to come in and cover either that or one of the midfield three sits back, so you've still got that three to be defensively solid.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting if we do pursue this deal for Borna Sosa. We'll have to wait and see as the summer goes on. But as you can see, he is very much a progressive left back, and actually, could that take the burden off Trippier being our solely attacking fullback? Can it give balance to the team? We'll wait and see. But look, as always, great chat about a number of our potential players that could come to Newcastle in various different positions, and this is just the first of a number in our left back series. So look, keep an eye out on all things social media and YouTube with regards to more of these, and we will be back very, very soon, guys. How'd you like that?